I just woke up and I want to talk about politics because what else is there to talk about when you just woke up? Politics in America, that's a word that a lot of people don't really understand because in America, politics doesn't mean what it really means, what it's supposed to mean, which is pertaining to policy and ideology and ideas about how to run the country or, what certain groups are entitled to and so on and so forth. What it means in America is the game of winning elections, which is not about policy. It's about zing, gotcha, It's about who has better hair, who looks more presidential, who sounds more presidential, who is more presidential, who should our next president be based on these totally superficial factors. And I love when I meet people who are like, I'm waiting to see the debate. Yeah, because you just want to see who argues better. You already know their policies are out there. Shouldn't you be determining things by policy and not by how well a candidate can argue with another candidate? Well, whatever. And of course the debates only ever include two candidates. Don't include the full spectrum of candidates, just the two that belong to the major parties in America. There are two paths you can go by, but in the long run, you're stuck on the road you're on. No, there's no changing it. And really it's just one path. It just has a little divider, and everyone on one side of the divider is looking at everyone on the other side of the divider and going, "You're evil," But it really doesn't mean anything. It's bullshit. Okay, we all know this. This is not an original observation. This is not going to blow anyone's fucking mind. But yeah, politics in America are not politics. They are entertainment. They're the gladiators in the arena, and we're the cheering spectators in the crowd looking for blood. Maybe not literal blood, but figurative blood. We want to see someone's life destroyed, and we want to see someone elevated to the highest position in the lands, so that half of us can defend him no matter what he does, and the other half of us can decry him no matter what he does. That's politics in America, but that's not really politics. Politics are what I described earlier: policy, ideas about how to run the country, etc., etc., etc. And I'd like to tell you about my politics, because I know that from the outside looking in, it must be kind of difficult to peg where I stand on a lot of things. I don't even know where to begin, but I guess that the best place to begin is with classes. The classes, the rich and the poor, and those are the classes. Let's not feed into this illusion of a middle class. There is no middle class. When there are people in this country who have billions of dollars, and there are people in this country who have hundreds of millions of dollars, then you can't be middle class because you have $100,000 or $50,000. That doesn't make any sense. Middle should mean middle. And if you got someone with millions of dollars and someone with thousands of dollars, that person with thousands of dollars is not in the middle. So that's like if at a fair, small was the size of a thimble, and then medium was the size of a slightly larger thimble, and then large was the size of an Olympic swimming pool. So being medium in this country is meaningless. There are two classes. There is a lower class and there is an upper class. And in America, the lower class lives pretty well compared to the impoverished people overseas. We largely live very well. And a lot of people, a lot of the libertarian ilk, a lot of people like How the World Works, or Steven Crowder, or Glenn Beck, Bill O'Reilly, conservatives and Republicans and libertarians, they attribute the wealth that the lower class in America has to our elevating of the upper class, because only in a capitalist system do people have the incentive to truly create. And I think there is some truth to this, but I also think that if you don't temper your capitalism with a little bit of socialism, you end up with a system where the disparities between rich and poor are so enormous that there is no semblance of fairness. How can you say for an instant that there is equality politically between me and Bill Gates? There isn't. And preserving equality is the most important thing to the political process. And I'm not talking about actual equality from individual to individual. I'm not talking about the idea that everyone is equal in some sort of, objective way, because I don't think that's true. You look around and you can clearly see that some people are better than others. No matter what your standard is, you have a standard, and some people are up here and some people are down here. But politically, it is essential that everyone be treated equally. Because if you have entire groups of people without a political voice, then oppression is sure to follow. And we've already had a long history of oppression. We don't need any more. So I think that, a system wherein there are caps on wealth, a system wherein the upper class isn't allowed to have thousands of times the amount of money as the lower class, a system where even the poorest people have housing, a system where even the poorest people are entitled to health care. That's what I believe in that respect, on the class issue. And if you disagree with that, fine. I've heard plenty of reasonable arguments against it, and if I hear another one in the comment section or in a video response to this, then I will maybe respond to it if I feel like it's worth my time. Now, that's a pretty mainstream belief. It's not the dominant belief of our day, but it is a mainstream belief. There are plenty of mainstream politicians who espouse it. They're not the majority, but they're out there. Now, let's talk about military. We spend more money on the military than any other country on the planet, handily. I don't think this should be the case. I don't think that we should have a military that is capable of being imperialistic, of going over to other people's countries and occupying them. I don't think our military should have that power, because I don't think that our government should have that power. Because remember, whether you are a liberal or a conservative, it is the government that controls the military. So if you're a conservative, how can you justify giving the government that much power? If you're a liberal, then how can you justify having a war machine that's so large, that's so powerful? Why do we need that? I think that we do have to have a standing military, but it should be for defense, and defense only. We should have enough of an army to maintain our borders, and that's it. We shouldn't be invading other people's countries. We shouldn't be worrying about what our neighbors in the Middle East are doing. We shouldn't be worrying about all these other countries and all their problems. That's none of our concern. And our involvement really just makes us juicier targets. And this is one of the few things I agree with Ron Paul on. We shouldn't be occupying other people's countries. It's wrong. And the people who try to tell you that we do it for our own safety are lying to you. We're doing it because there's a vested corporate and military-industrial complex need to do so, because there are a lot of lucrative contracts for a lot of big businesses over there in Iraq and Afghanistan. And there's a lot of material wealth in those countries that has been untapped. We're just doing the same thing we did to the Indians. We landed here and we threw them off their land and we used their resources. And then historically, people justify this. The apologists for these genocides apologize for them by saying, well, the Indians weren't really using their land optimally. That's like your neighbor taking over your backyard and saying, oh, it's rightfully mine because you didn't build a swimming pool here like you should have, so you weren't using this land to its optimal whatever. So there's no logic there. It's just a shoddy justification for inhuman cruelty, which, when you say inhuman, that's kind of a, I think inhuman should be the term we use to describe kindness, because that's really a lot more inhuman than cruelty, because there's nothing human, there's nothing that's not human about cruelty. Human beings have historically been cruel and barbaric to one another, so there's really nothing inhuman about it. So that word really has the wrong definition. So yeah, minimal military. When it comes to police and the justice system, as I said before, I don't believe in law and order. I do believe that for society to function, there have to be some laws, and I think that the ends justify the means. As much as I hate that kind of thinking, I think that there has to be some sort of laws. And as I said yesterday, I think they should be to protect victims, not so much to persecute or prosecute criminals. And I think, obviously you have to stop a criminal. I think that if someone steals from you, they should be fined. I think the government should pay you back your money, and that person should have to pay the government back, reimburse them for the money that they paid you. Like, if your car gets stolen and they catch the guy that did it, the government would pay you how much you lost when your car was stolen, and then that criminal would be liable to the government for that difference. And if he couldn't pay it, or he couldn't fucking make payments on it, then he would be imprisoned and forced to work off his debt. And that's what prison would be. It would be a work camp to work off your debts to society. And they would be monetary debts. They wouldn't be, and they'd have to be reasonable. I don't think anyone should go to prison for more than 10 years for any crime, including murder. Because I don't think anyone deserves to have their life ruined, no matter how bad of a thing they've done. I don't think it helps anyone to destroy two lives. Not only is the victim's life destroyed, but the person who took their life also has his life destroyed, or her life destroyed. If someone is a persistent danger to society, and it's shown that they are a danger to society, that they are going to keep killing people, or that they are predisposed towards acts of murder, then I think that they should be committed, not to an asylum, which is what we really, not mental institutions, not like the ones we have now, but somewhere that's a little bit more comfortable and humane, and meant to spend the rest of their lives there, in isolation from the rest of society, because they can't function as a part of society. I think that's fair. I think that's a fair and just treatment, if there can be a fair and just treatment which I'm skeptical of the concept of justice, but I think that's at least more humane than what we do now. And I guess a lot of people are going to wonder why I have such sympathy for killers and murderers and so on and so forth. The reason that I feel that way about them is because I don't view them as all that different from anyone else. You know, I think everyone has it in them, under the right circumstances, to commit an act of deplorable violence. And I think that people who are compelled to murder others, I think people like Jeffrey Dahmer or Albert Fish, they're obviously psychologically damaged people. I mean, this is not someone who killed someone in a bar fight. This is someone who has a compulsion to kill. Just gets off on murdering people. And, you know, how can you look at psychological illness, which is what it obviously is, and try to hold a person accountable for that? You know, there is something wrong with them. They don't deserve to be, you know, destroyed because of that. And let's put things in a very objective perspective here. I mean, like, you know, Jeffrey Dahmer killed 17 people. How many soldiers in Iraq right now could say the same thing? You know, why is it that when someone has government approval to kill people, we don't care as much? We think it's okay because they're fighting for our freedom. They're just fighting for our government. They're hired thugs killing people on behalf of the government. Why is that noble? It's not. Not that I think they're any worse than serial killers, but I don't think they're any better either. I don't think that doing it under the pretense of truth and justice in the American way makes you any better than someone who did it because it gives them a hard-on. I'm sorry, but I just don't see the difference. Life is life. You're taking it. End of story. And I guess there's some argument to be made that, you know, if they hadn't, you know, it's an us or them scenario. If we didn't take their lives, they would take ours. Well, you know, maybe you shouldn't be in their fucking country. Not that it's the individual soldier's choice, but, you know, when a soldier signs up to be in the Army, the Air Force, the Marines, whatever, they know that there is a real possibility of them going to another country and, you know, shooting people and clearing areas and, you know, go clear that building, shoot everyone that's in there. And then, you know, they go in there and they find, like, a nursery, and they just, well, we're supposed to shoot everyone that's in here, and bye-bye, baby, you know? Why is that something to be proud of? Why is that something that's patriotic, and we wave a flag and say, oh, this is good. These guys are just and righteous, but not like that serial killer down the block. He's an evil man. Not like that mob boss who had all those people killed. He's a bad person. I don't get it. You know, my girlfriend Holly was watching this video the other day about all these soldiers returning home and their kids, so happy to see them. And, you know, I was watching it, and, you know, there's a, you know, it's happy. It's a happy moment to see families reunited. But every time I see one of these soldiers hugging their kid, I just wonder how many people over in Iraq or Afghanistan, how many kids are never going to see their parents again because of what these guys did over there. And, you know, no one in America thinks about that kind of stuff. And that kind of annoys me. Why don't we think about that? So I believe that's how I think about the military. And, well, I guess I was supposed to be talking about the justice system, and I did cover that as well. So, justice system. So I talked about how we handle classism, how we handle the military, how we handle the justice system. I guess that's a good place to start, and maybe we can just go from here and build upon what I've said, and people can question it or argue with it or rage at it or whatever. Thank you for listening, though.